Madam President, our nation has seen some deeply concerning trends in recent decades. Increased polarization, flat wages for workers, and a growing tribal mindset that makes it increasingly difficult for people to trust each other and our public institutions. We are also seeing a partisan divide that is growing stronger and wider by the day. For example, 60 years ago, about 4% of Americans said that they would be seriously disappointed if their son or daughter married someone from the opposite political party. Today, it is almost half. We are also seeing a growing economic divide. 50 years ago, 9 out of 10 30-year-olds in America were better off than their parents at the same age. In 2010, only half were. It feels like the bonds that make us a cohesive society are fraying, and that life in the United States is growing more unfair for so many Americans. Bringing our country back together and strengthening our bonds with each other will not be an easy task. But without question, the Supreme Court has an unparalleled ability to either move our society forward or to pull us further apart. Unanimous opinions by the Supreme Court to strike down segregation in public schools, affirm the right of criminal defendants to an attorney, and to rein in the use of executive privilege by President Nixon show the ability of ideologically diverse judges to agree on what is fair and what is right. But the Supreme Court as an institution is far, far from infallible. The same institution that just 3 years ago made marriage equality the law of the land also upheld internment of American citizens of Japanese descent while our parents fought to liberate prisoners held in German concentration camps across the Atlantic Ocean. The same institution that gave American women the right to make decisions about their own reproductive health in Roe versus Wade denied citizenship to African American slaves in the shameful Dred Scott decision. Some of my colleagues have said they have confidence that Judge Kavanaugh believes in Roe versus Wade and that it is the settled law. I hope they're right, but I seriously doubt it. I think that if confirmed, Judge Kavanaugh will spearhead the continued erosion of rights for American women, and if given the chance, will vote to overturn this settled precedent. Lots of talk in Washington about the Supreme Court centers on precedent or power or procedure. But, Madam President, I would argue voting for a Supreme Court nominee is fundamentally about people. In making a decision on how I will vote on a Supreme Court nominee, I ask two questions. First, how will the nominee serve the people of Michigan? And second, how will the nominee serve the nation as a whole? And now more than ever, I think we need our Supreme Court not to be just fair. We also need Americans to truly believe that the justices that make up the Supreme Court are fair and capable of dispassionate deliberation. No human being, of course, can be entirely impartial or without bias, but we need Supreme Court justices who are able to understand their biases and set them aside for the good of the country. What we need is fairness. What we need is trust. Our fraying social fabric can only be rebuilt by trust. Trust in our institutions, trust in each other, and trust that our courts will give every American a fair chance in an era where corporate profits are ballooning to record levels. But 40% of Americans don't have the savings to cover a $400 emergency expense. A breakdown of trust undermines our democracy. The farther and faster we retreat to our partisan tribal corners, the harder it'll be to ever meet again in the middle. While Americans expect partisanship from their elected officials, they expect better from our judges. Our founders created a co-equal branch of government dedicated to fairness, and that was the Supreme Court. But unfortunately, when I examine the record of Judge Kavanaugh, I do not see an open mind. I do not see fairness. I see a partisan ideologue who will do judicial backflips to rule in favor of large corporations, the powerful, and the elite. When the Supreme Court conducts its duty to advise and consent on Supreme Court nominees, we often talk about methods of constitutional interpretation. Some judges are textualist, some are originalist, some are pragmatist. I believe Judge Kavanaugh is a corporatist, pure and simple. He starts with the outcome that corporate executives would want, and then he works backwards. I believe this is the unifying theme of his rulings over the past decade. Let's take a moment to review his record. Judge Kavanaugh sided with big polluters when he wrote that the Environmental Protection Agency could not enforce their good neighbor rule. This common sense rule simply states whose states with air pollution that blow across their state lines to bear some of the responsibility for those downwind emissions. The good neighbor rule is one of the best ways to crack down on sulfur dioxide, a noxious pollutant that has created a public health crisis in Detroit, with childhood asthma rates almost 40% above the national average. More sulfur dioxide in the air means more children in hospitals and fewer children in the classroom. Judge Kavanaugh substituted his own values and judgment for the decisions of Congress and the EPA, but fortunately, even conservative justices on the Supreme Court voted to overrule him and allow the good neighbor rule to stay in place. Judge Kavanaugh apparently does not believe in good neighbors, and he also does not believe in good bosses. He has consistently ruled against workers and their interest every chance that he gets. He wrote a dissent saying that companies can simply walk away from collective bargaining agreements made with their workers by just creating a spin-off, a non-union company. He ruled that companies can call the police to prevent workers from exercising their right to peacefully picket. For Judge Kavanaugh, the First Amendment right to speech and assembly comes second to a corporation's bottom line. This is the judicial philosophy that the Republican majority is just hours away from elevating to the highest court in the land. Based on a review of Judge Kavanaugh's rulings, it will be clear that if something is good for consumers, he will find a way to oppose it. For example, Judge Kavanaugh sided with large telecom corporations over Michigan families, startups, and small businesses when he wrote a dissent to gut net neutrality protections. Judge Kavanaugh sided with payday lenders, financial fraudsters, and global megabanks when he ruled that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was unconstitutional. Not only does Judge Kavanaugh always rule directly in favor of the largest corporations and powerful special interests, his rulings show that he wants to further tilt our campaign finance system in their favor. He has spoken out and ruled in favor of unlimited political spending in federal elections. And in 2011, Judge Kavanaugh authored an opinion that would allow foreign nationals, not Americans, foreign nationals to spend unlimited, yes, unlimited money on issue ads in American elections. Madam President, if you like dark money undermining our free and fair elections, well, Judge Kavanaugh is definitely your guy. I think that Judge Kavanaugh genuinely believes that money is speech and that corporations are people. To him, Americans are only an afterthought. Madam President, I know many Americans are wondering whether Judge Kavanaugh will look out for their best interest if confirmed to the Supreme Court. I hear it all the time as I travel across Michigan. To my fellow Americans, I would say this: if you enjoy breathing clean air, if you have a boss, if you care about not being defrauded by financial bad actors, or if you care about a woman's right to choose, Judge Kavanaugh will not be providing the fairness that you seek. Like many Americans, I followed closely the testimonies of Dr. Ford and Judge Kavanaugh before the Senate Judiciary Committee. And as I watched Dr. Ford, I didn't see a partisan ideologue motivated by politics. What I saw was a woman speaking with credibility, with earnestness, and incredible bravery. As I watched Judge Kavanaugh testify before that same Judiciary Committee, I saw something very different. I didn't see the temperament and humility we expect from a Supreme Court justice. I saw rage and I saw entitlement. I didn't see a thoughtful legal mind bound by precedent or tradition. I saw a partisan political operative cloaked in judicial robes bestowed upon him last decade by a Republican majority flexing their political muscle. I didn't see an umpire who wants to call balls and strikes. I saw a man who believes that he is the league's commissioner, a man who thinks he should have the power to rewrite the rules of the game to help his powerful friends. I didn't see a man committed to fairness and building trust. I saw a man committed to consolidating power and scoring political points. And I saw a man whose fluid relationship with the truth is beneath the United States Senate and beneath the United States Supreme Court. Today, more than ever, Americans need trust, and we need fairness. Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation will provide only more division in our country and cast a cloud over the decisions of the court for years to come. Madam President, I urge my colleagues to oppose Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation and start over with a nominee worthy of our Supreme Court.